What's up guys, it is that Panda Guy and I'm here again with another video, and today we're going to be kind of covering a somewhat serious topic, and that's one reason I'm showing my webcam too. I do not actually have anything to kind of record on my computer, hence because the serious topic is like I'm not going to record fights over I guess I could like go and do that in my editor and just talk over it, but I was like, you know what, whatever, right? That being said, the whole issue right now is the qualms that I guess people have had with the game, and I've obviously had my own kind of issues with the game. I know I've done like a lot of videos on migration in the past. I did even the whole Save Me drama for anybody who's kind of familiar with that and stuff. Um, and I mean, I remember I even talked about like kind of the frequency that was going on with like Island Raid and Archipelago Raid, because they were doing it every single week, right? And they were doing like Island Raid, Archipelago Raid, Island Raid, Archipelago Raid, blah, 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 back to back to back to back, and you only get like 2 days of rest basically between those events, or you get like a day or two, right? And I know I talked about it, and I was, just talking about how like the event frequency was an issue, and at this rate people would kind of burn out. And I will say I actually think that the issue is worse, was worse back then compared to now. And the reason I say that is I still think that there's an issue with having Genesis War every single week, besides the 1 week that Archipelago Raid exists. But I do think that it is kind of smaller, on a scale, because for anybody who doesn't know, like, or isn't kind of familiar, Genesis War is obviously a 3-day event. There's a lot less fights given that you have only 2 hours of fighting each day, and I do think that it kind of makes fighting a little bit more reasonable. Whereas when it was like Island Raid and Archipelago Raid, you were basically, you have a feeling to be chronically online a lot more, be it to watch towers, etc., etc. So I feel like it allows me to kind of take more time off the game, and overall, yeah, I do think that it like allows you to kind of just play more freely and stuff with Genesis War, and you're not having to be as time intensive. That being said, I do still think that there's an issue when you have the events every single week, because not only are you kind of just, I guess, exhausting players in a sense, you're also just exhausting their kind of fuel for the event. I actually like Genesis War personally. I know a lot of people don't. I like Genesis War. I think it's improved even more now with the merit rewards system, given that there's more encouragement to kind of go throughout rings and stuff. And talking about that, my alliance is actually, I've actually told them, hey, we're probably not going to throw this time around because we normally throw. I said, hey, we're not going to throw it this time around because we want to try to get to the last ring, as long as it doesn't look like a totally unreasonable war zone, where we won't be able to make it to the last ring at all. But yeah, we're going to be more encouraged to kind of push for merit chests, whereas before we were kind of more incentivized to throw because the rewards were so terrible, and it's like there's no reason for us to kind of even try. So overall, I do think that that's kind of a good side of it. But yeah, I do think event frequency is bad, and I've used this analogy a lot, but I'm going to use it again. You don't give like candy, or you don't give chocolate to somebody every single day, because eventually that chocolate isn't going to mean as much to that guy, or that sort of food, right? It's kind of the same with restaurants. I've had favorite restaurants, and I don't want to go there frequently because I know I'm gonna get more so tired of it compared to, like, I just would get more tired of it, and I wouldn't like it as much as I do right now. So I try to go there less frequently. Whereas if I go, like, let's say once a month, or I go there with, let's say, once every 2 months or something, right? It tastes a lot better. It's more of a delicacy for me, and all that kind of stuff. So overall, it's like you want to give people these kind of things in batches, so they're addicted to it, or they come back and they're like, oh yeah, I haven't seen this event in a month. That's nice. Instead of being like, oh yeah, I just played this event last week, whatever. Basically, I do think that there's an issue with kind of sorry, I need my glasses right now. Having like a very frequent events and stuff, it's a big issue. Um, oh yeah, I wanted to talk about this. So I do think that the main issue, the core issue to everything that people are kind of complaining about, has always been migration. And it's kind of crazy to me because we all came together in the past, and let me close the screen. We all came together like a really long time ago in the past, right? They had this survey and stuff that they kind of released, and they were like, hey guys, we hear you. We hear that you're having problems. And people answered the survey. They were like, oh yeah, we don't like this. We don't like this. Blah, 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 blah. And you know what ended up happening? they gave us cross-region alliances. They did slightly improve kind of migration and stuff, but overall they screwed up the update. I was like, what the hell is going on? And I honestly don't really understand what they're thinking sometimes. You would assume that a game company would kind of want to be more so on the like, and I feel like IGG does this well, but I feel like they're crossing the line, but you want to kind of be borderline, right? You don't want to upset the player base too much, but you do want to kind of maximize how much you're able to kind of profit off of them. So obviously they're going to be kind of underhanded, a little scummy, and I can understand that. I mean, if I was a business myself, I would probably do the same realistically, right? But I feel like they overdo it. They just don't listen at all. They don't care. They literally did a survey. They literally did a survey asking for what people wanted, and everybody, majority at least, wanted migration just closed or fixed or whatever the case. And they were like, all right, well, we'll do this tiny improvement, and then we're going to take 10 steps back by adding cross-region alliances. And not only did this kind of make it easier to, let's say, invade regions, not invade regions, but it's like top commander thievery usually, right? I mean, invading regions just comes down to people wanting a new home, so they're not really going to care about having to join another server's alliance. But when it comes down to like top commander and stuff, I mean, people are more willing to kind of jump regions and do that during like archipelago raid or island raid, whereas before, at least when people did it, it was only like one top commander during the month, because people had to be back in their region if they wanted to play with their actual alliance for island raid or archipelago raid. And they added cross-region alliances, and people were like, oh well, I don't have to keep jumping back and forth, I can just stay here and steal other top commanders. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there have been regions that have been threatened and stuff over this, regions that have been taken over simply for stealing top commander heroes and stuff. And it is sucky. And not only just for that, just people just kicking people out of their own region just because they want it, and it sucks, man. It sucks, and I wish they would have improved migration long ago, because I think that could have solved a lot of the issues that people had with the overall like game. And yeah, Odie's stretching. Odie. He isn't even looking over here. Odie. Okay. There he is. Well, either way. But you guys get my point, right? I think the game kind of had that core issue. And while I'm talking about that, another thing that I've heard people mentioning were like, what is it? It was kind of how the game was much more balanced in the day, and I will say that kind of stands for every game. I will say, like, I didn't expect the game to kind of be perfect forever. I didn't expect them to kind of keep the balance forever, and I do understand games kind of upsize or upscale at some point, right? I think armaments and like vehicles and that kind of stuff were an inevitability. But I do think that it was kind of rushed. They kind of introduced way too much at one time. I mean, even armaments, for example, I feel like they dumped too much on your head, whereas they could have slowly released a lot of these things, and it would have made a lot more sense than just like I said, dumping 100 plus armaments on your head. Plus, I think that how they are doing it now makes a lot more sense. So they should have done this earlier, and maybe it was so. Maybe they did this intentionally, but like for instance, you have arena where you can get like a 6 pant fragments, you can get 6 boot fragments every single week. Not supreme ones. There's like 4 and 4, but those are super hard to kind of grind up. You need a lot of coins. But overall, they've kind of made it a lot easier to kind of grind up these armaments. But even then, I on my main account. And let me remind you, I basically bought Mega Armament Sale every single week until I got these at 5-star, but I had spent definitely at least, I feel like, $200, $300 just to get finally like an adult, right, at all 5 stars on her gear. And it took me forever, dude. It took me months of grinding, and this isn't even a supreme armament set. I have just a normal armament set, and that's just one hero. My other accounts, none of them have full 5 stars, right? Like it's even now, it's going to take you a while to grind it up. So I didn't understand why they didn't kind of release this sooner, or release these features kind of when it dropped, right? And they just and Wales would spin on it no matter what the case is, because Wales want to be at the top of the game ASAP. They want to be able to crush you while they're at the top, and then once you catch up, they release something else, and that would make a lot more sense, and that would kind of that would appease the player base a lot more, and it just wouldn't feel like as overwhelming, feeling like you have to focus in 20 areas at one time. And even with Workshop, they released it pretty poorly originally. For people that don't know, it was paywalled completely, and then they were like, okay, well, and I do want to say, I think that this was one of the biggest catches I've seen a game made, right? Like kind of fixing their own mistakes, was making sure that tier 2s were free, right? And tier 3s are very grindable, which it does take you quite a while to grind them. Don't get me wrong, because I still don't have a tier 3 on my T6 accounts right now. But from enough Genesis War, like War Meets War and our Island Raid, or sorry, Archipelago Raid, War Meets War, I will eventually be able to unlock the tier 6s that I need. So it will take some time. I'll get there. But, overall, I do think that the game kind of has its faults. I do wish that it would have the developers would kind of take the players' qualms more seriously. I do think that there's a misconception, maybe though. A lot of people think like the game's maybe dying or something, and it might be. But I do think that the game is likely still growing, which is very odd. Don't get me wrong. But IGG aren't new at this, right? They have Lords Mobile. Lords Mobile, I feel like they built pretty hard, right? And somehow the game's still growing. I don't know how it is, but I think the game knows what they're doing. They know that the player base isn't happy, but they're like, hey, the game's still growing, the game's still making a lot of money, and even if these guys leave, someone's going to replace them. And maybe that's the mindset. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I do think that there might be a misconception about the game just dying. And I've had a misconception myself in the past. I know I made like a video, oh, is Doomsday dying? I think I made that like a few months ago. But thinking about it now, it's kind of hard to kill games like these off, and even if you do, it takes like extreme greed, and I don't even mean this type of greed. I mean extreme to another level. And even if that's the case, it usually takes you quite a few years to kind of drop off the player base because of how many people kind of invest a lot of time. I mean, even I myself, I'm upset with a lot of the updates and stuff. I think the updates could be better, but I'm obviously not quitting anytime soon. I've obviously played a lot less. But everybody doesn't know, I don't really pop in as much. I usually just jump in on the game to just gather, right? Maybe collect my daily quest sometimes. That is about it. And outside of that, obviously I fight, but I don't really get on outside of like fights and just gathering resources because I don't care as much. I don't care as much anymore. But I'm not gonna quit. I still find the fights and stuff enjoyable. Just not every single fight's worth it. Not every single fight makes sense to me. So, I don't know, man. My mind right now is kind of all over the place. For anybody who doesn't know, they are doing like this boycott on Genesis War. I'm kind of on the fence about it personally. I might not just completely understand where they're coming from in some senses. Maybe like, I think it's more so I don't understand why they're boycotting completely. If someone wants to tell me why, because if they're generally just boycotting because they don't like Genesis War, I don't really agree. Like if it's boycotting because it's the only way to kind of get IGG's attention, I can understand that. It's better than boycotting spending, because realistically people are not going to stop spending. They'll tell you they'll stop spending and they'll just spend, right? And I don't blame people for spending, right? But spending is not a good way to boycott, or it's not like an effective way because it just doesn't work, right? So I do think like boycotting something like Genesis War, Archipelago Raid works far better. It's just really hard to get the whole community on top, and me included, because it's like, hey, if I sit out this week, I'm missing out on rewards, whereas like other people are still taking advantage of it because they don't care about the boycott, or maybe they see it and they're like, oh, well, now I can get ahead of the game type stuff, right? And I think that's kind of like how people feel with a lot of events and stuff. And I don't know, man. You guys let me know what you guys think about the whole thing, what you guys feel, because I know that this was getting a decent amount of traction in the game. That being said, I do appreciate you guys for stopping by as always. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to end it off there, okay? I do appreciate you guys though for watching as always. Hope you guys have a great day or night though, and that is it. Peace out.